Hello and welcome to the session on In-Basket. My name is Sheila and this is Teresa and Angela.
Hello.
And we're going to take you through the In-Basket exercise. Can someone tell me what we mean by In-Basket?
What I think an in-basket is I think it's a basket on your desk and it's filled with memos.
Okay, very good. Anybody else have anything to add about that? Okay, well, many of you are managers and you already have in-baskets right on your desk. You get notices and memos and letters. Well, who sends these to you? Anybody?
You get memos from your directors, you get memos from your supervisors, you get memos from people throughout the company.
Very good, that's true. You get them from your boss, you get them from other staff, from your colleagues. And what about dates and deadlines? And what do you do with them?
I hope to prioritize them based on the dates and deadlines.
Okay.
When I look at dates and deadlines, I also try to figure out who in terms of the organization is more important than other people. So I set up a list of priorities based on who sent me the memo, which is not ordinarily fair, but it gets the job done because you try to respond to your supervisors or upper management first. So if I see something from the commissioner, even if it's trivial, it becomes important based on my own relationship with the organization.
Okay, that's right. So in other words, while others are put aside, some need your attention right away. And in a sense, what you're doing is you're taking care of what's in your in-basket. And basically, that's what we are going to practice today. What to do with those things that show up in your in-basket. So please turn to your test-taking session in the back of the book. For those that just brought in the in-basket portion, you could just look in that. And the ones in the book, they're in the back of the book right before the last session. Okay, we have the curriculum here, and all of you have this in your book. So we can look at the in-basket exercise, the curriculum. And basically what we're trying to do here is familiarize you. We want you to touch these documents. We want you to touch this in-basket experience. And we want you to be so comfortable with this so that when you go into the exam, you won't have a nervous breakdown. So, you know, even though you may be a manager and you have these papers on your desk at home, taking an exam is a totally different experience. But I think you will do well if you just go through this exercise with me and you'll handle it fine. Because one of the things that we think is going to be on this test is on the notice of exam. Everyone has a copy, actually, of the notice of exam because I gave it out to you at the beginning session when you got your materials and your schedules. In the back of that package was a copy of the notice of exam. But if you don't have that with you today, you can look at the screen and you'll notice that at the very, very bottom, it says, certain questions may be answered on the basis of documents and other information supplied to the candidates on the date of the written test. So when you go into this exam, while you're trying to do your multiple choice questions, you will be given a packet. And this packet will contain documents. So what we're trying to do here today is have you, once again, touch and feel these documents so that when you go into the exam, you'll know what to do with those documents. And you'll notice also on the notice of exam that there are certain dimensions that they're trying to test you with. And what we figured out was decisiveness. Readiness to make decisions, render judgments, take action, or commit oneself. Now, how do you do that? You can't do that on a multiple choice question. but you might be able to do that in how you answer an in-basket letter or memo. Same thing with judgment. It's very hard to mark you on judgment on a multiple choice question if they're asking you a question on what management theory there is. They're not judging you, figuring out your judgment, but if you know what to do with an in-basket, a letter, or a memo, that takes judgment. Sensitivity is another one that we've been trying to look at. After all, you have staff. Somebody on the staff writes you a letter, or somebody says they need a promotion, or whatever it is. You're going to have to know what to do with these memos, and I think that this is how we're going to decide whether you have sensitivity or not. So there's many ways to look at these numbers on here and see if many of them relate to the in-basket. A lot of it is actual facts, but an in-basket is a different story altogether. So we think it might be 3, 6, and 11, but it also could be 2, behavior flexibility. It could be 4. How do you delegate with the material? It could be 5. How you deal with your subordinate. It could be organizational sensitivity, how you relate to your organization, how you relate to your staff. It could be 10, it could be 13, it could be anything. That's why we want you to do this in-basket and try to see how you take care of these memos and these letters. Okay, what we have up on the screen now is Steve Covey's matrix. And basically what that is his way of telling you how to prioritize your memos. He has 4 quadrants here, and basically he wants you to work without being in crisis. That's a laugh. So basically he wants you to stay in quadrant 2, which is what we would be the perfect of all perfect worlds, sort of like the Walgreens advertisement, you know, you're in perfect. So we try to do that. So read the article when you get a chance. It's in your book. We have another article. We have TRAF, which is another way of looking at your memos. TRAF is TRAF, but we're really familiar with the word trash. So if you look at it, this is actually what you do with anything that shows up on your desk. And I'm not so sure the file is a regular file, but a round file. So it's probably a trash file also. Okay? So these are your possibilities of what you're going to be doing with these memos. You know, they're all familiar with what to do with your memos when you get them. And now this in-basket is actually the same in-basket that was given in the 1985 exam. And how do I know that? Because I took the 1985 exam. And guess what? I passed it. And in this type of test, they had a very strange thing occur. They were marking dimensions. Just like we did before, we showed you the sensitivity and judgment. Well, in this particular exam, it was all dimensions. Assertiveness, initiative, judgment. And they had one question which I remember, and when you do the in-basket, you'll read it also because it was one of the best ones. They asked you if you would let your secretary take her vacation. And when you read the information about the test, you found that you had just come to work the first day, and your secretary was going away the next day. So you had to decide whether you were going to let her take her vacation. Well, of course I let her take her vacation. That's who I am. Well, it turns out that I did let her take a vacation, and I got 2 points for sensitivity. But I got -4 points for judgment. Now, this is no way to mark an exam for manager. And so I think at this time, since it's all going to be multiple choice, and it was discussed I think this time around they're going to have definite answers for these multiple choice questions. They're not going to have pluses and they're not going to have minuses. So at this time, what I would like you to do is go into and open up your in-basket exercise. And the first thing you will notice is the introduction. Okay, these instructions are going to help you figure out what's going on in your exercise. You are working in an organization, and this information will help you figure out your environment. So I want you to take a few minutes now and read the instructions. And then I want you to discuss them with your members. Now, this is the time where your group will work as a team. So please take a few minutes now and read these instructions.
All right. And how are you doing?
Okay, I'm just trying to understand first what my position is in the organization. I'm not so sure about that. How could I find that out?
Well, you'll find that out a little bit later on, but if you read this, it'll kind of give you a clear picture.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Oh, just fine. Trying to get through some of these new instructions and see exactly how I'm going to deal with the issues on this new job.
Okay. Does it make sense?
It's a lot of pressure, but I will do the best that I can.
Okay. All right. And how are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing all right. From what I've read, it seems to be a pretty stressful office. Someone's had a heart attack, I see. And apparently there's a lot of things that needs to be addressed. But I'm almost halfway through, though, so I'm still reading.
Well, I find this exercise challenging because this role for this new supervisor who has pressing work left from the old job and has a new challenge with the new job and will have to apparently juggle both what was outstanding before and what is to come. So I think that this is a very interesting exercise.
I think that what they're stressing here is that the key person in this particular unit is Miss Jane Butler, who is the secretary. She seems to be the point person for him understanding his obligations and what has to be done, rather than the other supervisors. So it appears that he's going to have to depend on her a lot in order to meet the time constraints.
Now that we've read the instructions, I guess you'd like to know who you are. So take out your table of organization and see if you can find yourself on there. Does anybody like to point out who you are on this T of O?
Shift 3 supervisor, production, Will Judd.
Okay, and he is over here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, the next thing that you'll notice in your in-basket exercise are memos. You have very many memos in there. Now, since we don't have that much time, we're going to pick out some of them, and I'm going to tell you which ones you should pull out and read and discuss in your group. We're going to take number 9. Now, let me tell you that the number of the memo is at the bottom of the sheet. It looks like a page number. Actually, it is a page number, but that's the memo number also. So look down at the bottom and pull out numbers 9, 11, 15, 19, 23, 27, 32, 37, 43, 49, 57, and 67. On the slide here, you have the numbers of the memos that I'd like you to take out. There's a dozen of them. We're going to work with these 12 memos. So please take them out, and these are the ones that we will be reading together and deciding what to do with them. So please, right now, take them out and read them and talk to your neighbors and discuss what the urgency is, if you can put them aside, if they should be looked at right away, if they should be delegated. In other words, you can draft them. You can look at Covey's prioritizing. You have dates on them. And you also have your instructions. Now, you know by your instructions that certain things have occurred, and you're going to be backed up with some of the dates on these. So you need to really know what you want to do with them.
Okay, I see you're all looking at Memo 9. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, it's the secretary.
Okay, did you get a chance to read it yet?
In some ways, yes, I read it, but in some ways it just seems like an introduction to Mr. Judd saying, I'm leaving you what you have to look at, and that because you're filling the shoes of Mr. Mason, it's going to mean a lot of work because he avoided certain crucial decisions. So you kind of get the feeling that what's going to come after this might be a lot of things that Mr. Mason, avoided.
Thank you. Is that the opinion of everybody at the table?
Yes, well, there's certainly some crucial language in this, avoiding certain crucial decisions, meaning some of the memorandums that you've been presented with may have very critical issues to deal with, and it would be wise to look at that group of memorandum as quickly as possible. You may have, it is quite possible that you may have to make some of those critical decisions immediately.
You have some deadlines here, and September 11th, of course, is Sunday. The 12th and 13th is Monday and Tuesday. He's going to be away.
Is anybody looking at the dates of the
So the 14th is a
memo?
Wednesday. That's his first day on the job, and there are some deadlines for September 15th. One of the things that's important is someone wants to work overtime 3 hours, and you need to ask for overtime 3 days in advance of the expected need. So that's one thing that has to be addressed pretty quickly. The second thing, maybe even more important, is somebody's going to quit his job as of the 15th of the month. So that person has to be spoken to, called in and spoken to, probably right away on Wednesday, the first thing when you come in. But you do have to put the overtime request down Sunday because you have 3 days to do that. So that would be the first thing. Second thing would be the person who's threatening to quit. There's a memo from Bob Rogers, who's your boss, wanting to know about bonuses. And that can wait because there's no deadline on that. But that is from your boss, the person you report directly to. So you want to put that as a priority. There's a memo from Steve Long, who's a personnel director, and they want to know about selecting non-management people for movement to management because retirements are coming up in 2 years. That's a very low priority right now. More important, somebody wants to do a Channel 5 interview, and they're looking to recommend Joe Sutton, who has just had a very poor letter written about his character. So unless you can get a recommendation for somebody else, you may not want to pick Joe Sutton if what the letter says is true. There's also recommendation to promote.
If I was this person that was just promoted, I would have very great difficulty recommending people for promotions or, at this point in time, bonuses, since I really do not know any of the employees. And based upon the instructions or directions, since there was a question about the actual judgment of the previous supervisor, I would want to notify them that I would hold it in abeyance until I got a feel of the unit and the working relationships and the quality of the staff.
Okay, did everybody here get a chance to look at the memos? Did you look at the dates or anything? Does it make sense to you?
Well, you wanted to talk about that memo, didn't you? 27.
Well, I
27.
I merely asked your opinions of memo number 27. Is it critical? Should it be acted on? What's your opinion? Our collective opinion, that is.
I think it's important, but maybe not critical, but I'd also want to know a little bit more about Joe Sutton and what kind of job he plays for my unit. I mean, if he is part of, I don't know, public relations, and if it is true, I think we'd have to investigate the primary source or just talk to him.
It appears as though the primary source happens to be anonymous. Miss Mabel Agitator is conscientious citizen. Is that her name? Or?
I would trash it. I mean,
I
I
certainly
totally
would.
trash this. I wouldn't pay any attention to it because it's not my business what they do after work and with who they're doing it.
Okay, what I wanted to bring to your mind with number 27, you're saying trash it, right? But look at you have to look at all number 67. Mr. Sutton, yes, Mr. Sutton is supposed to be doing a TV. He's been selected to do a TV appearance for the company. So this has to be addressed. He got time on Channel 5 for a 5-minute interview with the typical assembly line worker, and he was the person that they had in mind to do it. So I wouldn't trash number 27. You have to investigate it based on what number 67 says.
Well, I think you're actually getting the hang of this thing, and actually you're doing what we think is very important. We really want you to touch and talk about these memos. It may sound funny, but we actually want you to touch and read them and get familiar with them, get comfortable with them. And so when you take the exam, this will not be a strange environment for you. Okay, now we're going to discuss the part of the answers for the test for some of these memos that we've gone through. I know that you've looked at memos 9, 11, 15, 19, 23, 27, 32, 37, 43, 49, 57, and 67. Right now, we're going to look at the test for only 5 of these, since we don't have that much time to go through them all. And then we'll look at the scoring for some of those. So if you look at the tests given by the instructor, you'll notice that Part 1 and Problem 1, which is the memo from Jane Butler to Will Judd, says page 9. Now that obviously is the number on your memo. And you'll notice that at the bottom you'll see a P11 also. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull out the memos 9, 19, 27, 43, and 67. And those are the memos that we're going to look at the test scores for. So let's look at number 9. It says, after reading the note left for me, I will, how many 1s out there? Okay, none. Any 2s? No. How about a 3? Okay, there's a 3. 3 is write a note to myself to see her later. Okay, that's a possibility. How about number 4? Oh, there's a few number 4s here. Write a note to her to plan to see me later to discuss the problems. Okay, well, if we're writing a note to ourselves and then we're writing a note to her, I guess that's possible. If you look down the list from 1 to 4, 5 to 11, you'll notice that between 12 and 15, it does say in a mental note to myself. So maybe that's a clue. There may be other clues in some of these answers. So let's see, we did number 4. Now what about number 5? in my communication with Miss Butler. Obviously, one of the things in number 4 says to write her a note to see her later, so you have another clue. You know that you have a communication with her. So number 5, anybody? No one? Now, come on, read number 5. Criticize her for a critical attitude about Mason. Now, you remember the memo. It said, Mason never got to, and you'll have to straighten out. So she is a little critical about him. So those that marked 5 are probably in the right direction. How about 6? Well, that's a possibility. Ask her to postpone her vacation. How many people want to postpone her vacation? Remember, when I took the test, I didn't postpone her vacation, but we don't know what the answers are yet unless you've looked ahead. How many of you were asking to do that? Quite a few of you. That's very interesting. Okay. How about 8? None? Okay. 9? Well, let's see. Direct her to report to work immediately and not take a vacation. Well, that's also one of the possibilities, I guess. How about number 10? You want to see her Wednesday since her vacation is not due to start? Well, if you're asking her to postpone it, how many of you are not going to ask her to postpone it? Well, that's nice. Half of you want to postpone it and half don't. Okay, let's see who comes out ahead on this one. Ask her to gather other information and records available. Okay, let's put down a few for number 11. Now we get back to in a mental note. Ask Rogers for vacation relief. Well, those of you that are giving her the vacation would probably want to do that. Request that she change her vacation schedule. It's always that option. Thank her for her courteous welcome. Okay. Well, let's go to the next memo before we go to the scoring on this. Now we want to look at memo number 19. The test scores are on page 81 and 82. Let's see what we have there. Okay, we have the memo to Mason from Green. Shall we read that memo? It's kind of short now. We could read that. Please keep an hourly record of your people for the month of September on the new IBM cards. Sounds pretty reasonable. Failure to do this will result in my bringing this to the attention of Mr. Felton. Okay, now who is Mr. Green anyway? Mr. Green is someone that's on your level. So I don't know why he's talking to you this way. So let's see what we have for a solution here. Having reviewed the memo, how many will do 57? Good. Nobody wants to not do anything. Number 58, write a letter to Green. Possibility here. Ask Jane to handle this? I don't know. That's a little bit out of her hand, I would think. Plan to handle this myself might be a better answer. How many of you picked 60? Okay, a few of you did that. And now here's your clue. In the letter to Green, obviously you're supposed to write a letter to Green. Look back at number 58. And what do you want to do? Say that I do not think his threatening tone is warranted? Sounds good to me, because we're not going to tell him where to go, and we're not going to give him his answer, so I would think 62 is probably the best way to go on that one. Let's look at memo 27 now. I think you'll find that in the test pages 83, and then we'll turn to page 84. We have a letter to Mason from Mabel Agitator. How about if we read that? I thought you should know that one of your men is running around with a married woman in town. He drinks an awful lot and is not faithful to his wife, and certainly creates a bad image for your company. I felt it was my duty to let you know this. His name is Joe Sutton, a conscientious citizen, Miss Mabel Agitator. Well, let's see. Letter to Mason from Mabel Agitator. Having considered this anonymous letter, you will, anybody for 97? Completely disregard it and throw it away. I tell you, that looks very interesting. Most of the class would be willing to do that. Those of you that aren't, let's see what you come up with. Say nothing to Sutton about it? Anybody for that one? No. How about 99? Arrange a meeting with Sutton in which he will mention the letter since he feels he would like to know about it. How many of you picked that one? Well, there's one. Okay, over there. That's not too many either. Okay, turn to the next page, 84. How about notify Lou Jackson since he has written a letter concerning this problem? No 102s? Any 103s? No. Well, here's part of your clue. In a meeting with Sutton, I will, what, 104? Tell him that the company does not approve of him giving them a bad image? Well, how many of you took that one? A lot of you took that one. Well, let's see if you're right when we get to the scoring. Tell him that I just felt he would like to know and has a right to know it. How many of you did that? Quite a few of you think that he should know that there's an anonymous letter about him. Okay, that's a possibility. Tell him that you intend to put the letter in his personal file. I don't know. How many of you chose that? Not too many. Okay. How about 107? Tell him that I intend to put the letter in the trash can. Well, that's almost like completely disregard it and throw it away, but it's sharing it with him. So that's a possibility. Okay, let's look at the next memo, and then we'll come back to the scoring. Let's look at memo 43 for the test answers. You'll find those on page 87 and 88. Does everybody turn to page 87 and 88 now? Okay, I'll wait a second. Okay, you'll notice at the bottom of the page that we're looking at memo 43. Okay, let's read memo 43. To Mr. Mason. Now, of course, you're not Mr. Mason at this point, and it's dated August 15th, and we're already in September, if you notice the dates on the front, which showed you what your instructions were all about. Please have in my office by September 15th your ideas as to what the best method is for selecting non-management people for movement to management. As you know, this is a crucial problem due to the number of retirements that will come up in the next 2 years. Steve Long. Well, first you need to know who Steve Long is, so find him on your T of O. Okay, everyone found him? Now let's see. Having considered Long's request, your reaction is 185. How many responded to that? Not to bother with the memo, since he will know that I have just arrived on the job anyway. Well, I'm not sure I would do that, but how many of you chose that? None of you. Very good. Let's turn the page. How about 186? To write him a note. Well, if you sneak down a little bit, you'll notice that you're supposed to write a note to Long. So that 186 looks correct. How about 187? To submit a list of methods that are generally used for such a selection? I don't know. Does he know this? Do you know this as Judd? All the methods? Okay, good. No one chose that. Now let's look at the note to Long. 188. I say that I shall be glad to offer some suggestions at a later date. I don't know. How many of you chose that one? Nobody. Oh, okay. 189. Say that I cannot meet his deadline with a list of adequate suggestions. Sounds reasonable. How many chose that one? Okay, you, quite a few. How about 190? Say that I should like to have an opportunity to discuss this crucial problem with you sometime in order to be better informed on the subject. Okay, how many did? Oh, good. A lot of you did that one. I mean, it can't hurt, right? And for your own information, how many chose 191? Study the strengths and weaknesses of the current procedure in the light of demands likely to arise in the future. I don't know. You just arrived. You have so many things to do. How about 192? Plan to investigate the procedures currently used. That might be a good one to do. Okay, let's hold 43 on the side and do the next one. Let's do number 67. Okay, 67 test scores you will find on page 93. Everybody turn to page 93. Okay, you'll see in the middle of the page the letter from Campbell to Mason, memo, page 67. Now let's read that one together. Mr. Walter Mason, who is not you, obviously. We have gotten time on Channel 5 for a 5-minute interview with the typical assembly line worker. I must have the name of the man in my office by September 15th. Let's have a pleasant-looking, personable, and above all, upstanding individual. Somebody suggested Joe Sutton, and unless I hear differently, I'll use him. J.C. Campbell, TV manager. Well, how does this fit with all your instructions and your previous memos? Looks kind of weird, so let's see what we can do with that one. Campbell's letter leads me to take the following action. I will let things go as they are. How many of you let that go as they are? Good, nobody. I will send a message to Campbell okaying the use of Sutton. I hope none of you did that one. How about I will send a note to Campbell saying that I cannot in good conscience recommend the use of Sutton. I think that's a little more on the mark. Let's mark that one off. I will write a note to Rogers asking him if he will choose for me, since he probably knows the men well enough to make a fair choice, and submit this choice to Campbell. Okay, how many of you think that's a good alternative? Some of you do. Okay, that's a suggestion. 295. I will have Jane contact Campbell and ask him if he can possibly wait as late as Wednesday for me to recommend someone. Well, let's see about that. Does he know anybody? Can he really recommend someone? And do you want Jane to do this? Or would you rather call him and find out more about it? I don't think that's such a hot answer. How about 296? I will recommend the use of one of the 4 men on my shift with an excellent rating. How about that? If you don't want to use Sutton, you'd have to use somebody. Let's try that as a possible answer. Well, lo and behold, if I recommend the use of one of my men with an excellent rating, so there's part of your answer, the clue. Should it be Cantor, Nixon, or Grant? Now remember, Nixon is unhappy, he wants to resign and all that, and Cantor, well, we don't know too much about him. But we know, it says here that Grant has few absences and an excellent performance rating. Might be the good selection, so let's mark him off. Okay, now I think we have an opportunity to look at our scoring and see how we've done. Okay, now I think it's time to go to the self-scoring part, which you'll see on page 95, and a copy of this is on the slide here. We have several pages of self-scoring, and we're putting up the page 95. There are several dimensions in the self-scoring if you want to look at them. You have sensitivity and many questions about that to see if you're a sensitive manager. There's organizing and planning ability and decision making. Now remember what we said about the 85 test. They scored you in a very strange way. Hopefully they won't do that again, but they still want to measure your sensitivity and your judgment and your decision making. So let's see how we score on that one. So for number 9, let's see. Did you note? I think you'll find the answers for number 9 under sensitivity under 1, 2, and 3. So shall we read those? Did you note Jane Butler's critical attitude toward Mason? I think we did. That was one of the ones that we ticked off. So if you did that, you got 1 point. Number 2, did you note that Jane Butler would be available to see you on Wednesday, as her vacation doesn't start until the 15th? Well, I think we noted that. The point is, are they saying now that you're going to let her take her vacation? Well, we're not sure about that yet, but apparently if you want to meet her on Wednesday and she's leaving on Thursday, we're still up in the air as to whether we're getting any credit for giving her her vacation. So if you noted that she was leaving on the Thursday and you want to meet with her on Wednesday, you got a whopping 4 points for that. So I don't know. We'll have to find out. Did you realize you will need her? It would be best to cancel her vacation? Now, you see, there's the 2 points. So what are we talking about here? If we let her take her vacation, we get points. If we don't let her take her vacation, we get points. Thank God in this exam there's going to be a yes or a no answer for our multiple choice. Because you see what they did to me in the 85 exam. Okay, let's go down to page 96, numbers 1 and 2. On decision making for memo 9. Okay, did you cancel Jane's vacation? All those that canceled Jane's vacation, you only got 1 point. So, I don't know. I would rather get the 4 points that have her come in on Wednesday, but you did get a point anyway if you canceled it. And did you arrange to talk to Jane about her critical note about Mason? Now that's a serious one. You get 4 points if you recognize that as one of your answers. Okay, well that sort of helps us on memo number 9. Let's go to memo number 43 now. We can't do all of them because we don't have time. So let's look at the scoring for memo number 43. That's on page 97. Turn to page 97. And after reading all of these numbers 4, 5, and so forth, I think memo 43 refers to number 11 and 12. Did you neglect to develop a memo as to the best way to select people for movement to management? If you didn't do that, which I think was one of the things that we chose, we got 1 point. Good for us. Did you neglect to send Steele your plans for training and developing the people under you? Another 1 point. See, we just got the job now, and I don't know how much we could have done in any case. So those are the possible answers for 43, and I think you chose well. Okay, why don't we go to the scoring for number 67. That'll be the last memo that we'll be looking at today. And if you turn to page 95, go back to page 95. And look at numbers 16 and 17, which is at the bottom of the page. I think those are the ones that refers to the number memo 67. Did you note the absences for August. Well, if you had chosen Grant to be the person on the TV, then you obviously did notice the absences because you chose him because he had a good absentee record. So if you did that, you got your 1 point. And did you use them in your decisions? Well, yes, you did. You certainly did. And you got 2 more points for that. So Grant was apparently the right decision. Now let's turn to the next page, 96, and look at the top of the sheet. And we notice that there are number 19 and 20 have to do with, one is the Sutton memo. Did you question Sutton as a choice for the TV figure? You bet you did. So you got 1 point for that. You guys are going to make great managers, I must tell you. Did you note who the good non-management people are? Well, you did. You saw that there was Grant and Nixon and the other fella, but you chose Grant, so you did take a good look at the non-management good people. So you're getting 2 points for that. Okay, for the last one now, let's look at page 97, number 17. That's also part of Memo 67. Did you veto the suggestion of Sutton as the TV personality? You sure did. And here's another point for you. So I think that you are answering these questions pretty good and picking out the scores for you. I'm not going to go into the scoring because we're not using the same scoring. But let's look back at organizing and planning on page 96. These don't have to do with a specific memo, but just in general to see if you have organizing and planning ability. Number 1, did you divide the in-basket into those items that should be handled now and those that could wait? Well, we did talk about Covey's matrix in the beginning, and we did do the TRAF. So I think that you were able to do that. You spent a lot of time on those dozen memos in the beginning, and you did separate them and see which ones needed to be done faster and slower and whatever. So let's look down at number 8. Did you read through the items briefly before starting? Of course you did. That's what we did. We had a great exercise here, and you all spoke with each other and discussed it. So you would get a point for that. Did you underline any names in the instructions? You probably did. Many of you did. I saw you underlining. And did you work through the items and refer back to the organization chart? We all did that. We did that very often because we had to know where these memos were coming from. So I think what we've done is given you a hands-on experience in the in-basket exercise. And I think with this hands-on experience and your comfort with this, your familiarity with this, is going to make your exam much easier for you. But remember, do not talk to your neighbors like you did here. You have to do that on your own. So at this time, I'd like to thank you for coming to the session and have fun.